A very good afternoon, everyone. I, Apurva, Project Officer on behalf of City University, would like to take pleasure of welcoming to Miss Isha Sharma, who is founder at Trademark and Viadroit, and our today expert speaker on the topic how to validate your business idea. Without any further delay, I hand over this session to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for inviting me to deliver the session. Am I allowed to share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just a second. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sure. So, as the topic suggests, we will be going ahead with the validation of your idea topic. But before that, I would like to first of all probably highlight certain points in terms of pre-validation that you need to do before establishing a startup or probably going under any form of registration on the behalf of organizations and universities as well. So, to begin with, whenever you conceive an idea, so when I talk about idea, it can be categorized into multiple subheads as well. Say, for example, if I talk about Swiggy, so Swiggy was an idea. If I talk about Amazon, Amazon was an idea. So somebody conceived it at some point of time and they executed the same into some fashion, which resulted into either startups or some platforms and different kind of businesses as well. So what to do when you conceive an idea? So first of all, idea, as I was telling you, can be categorized into multiple subheads. So if the idea is talking about a brand name, so say for example, you develop some kind of product or some kind of a business idea, and now you want to name that thing. So there will be a logo and then there will be a brand name that you will select. So all that will fall under your trademark category where you can protect that particular brand name and logo so that nobody else infringes the same. When we talk about anything related to the technological part, say, for example, your smartwatches, your security devices, mobile phones with integrated and embedded systems, all these are technological innovations. So if I talk about drones, anything which is having some kind of functional and the technical feature will fall under patent applications. If you come up with a app which is currently, I would say that major focus in industry where the startups are coming into picture and innovation is happening. So if the innovation or the idea is related to developing a software or an app or a website, or it is related to writing a novel, you have a fiction story, or you have some kind of training modules, your delivering mechanism, anything related to that, or if you create mathematical formulas, all that can be protected under copyright applications. Then anything which is aesthetically appealing. So if I talk about industries which are related to, say, furniture or products for that matter, jewelry, your designing of your pharmaceutical products, that all can be the only the aesthetic appeal of the product. So that will be falling under design application. So taking this example of a mobile phone, because what I assume is that everybody uses it, so it's easier for you to understand in terms of a mobile phone. So for a mobile phone, say for example, somebody uses iPhone or somebody uses OnePlus. So the brand name OnePlus as well as the logo will be protected under trademark. So anybody whosoever came up with this invention started a business. Now in that business, the brand name will be protected by a trademark application. So if you conceive an idea related to the brand names as well as the logo, what you need to do for the protection would be you need to go to IP India website if in case it is done in Indian jurisdiction and cross check whether that name is available or not. So if that name is already being taken by somebody, you cannot proceed further. If the name is available and it is not existing in the database, not granted to anybody else, then you can proceed with the registration and your, which can be either the company registration or trademark applications as well. So for the same mobile phone, there was a technology which was created. So for the technological part, you don't want anybody else to copy your technology. So a patent application can be filed for the same. For the software integrated part of that mobile phone, you can file for a copyright application as we discussed. And for the aesthetic appeal, so you must have seen BlackBerry design or your Samsung Curve design. So those kind of designs are protected under the Design Act, where they filed for such applications. So nobody can replicate the same designs for a defined period of time unless it goes to the public domain. So you can also protect your design applications. Then we have certain I would say trade secrets, which doesn't fall into any form of IP. So there is no trade secret law as such, but you can always protect it under your legal compliances. So that would be getting your non-disclosure agreements in place, confidentiality agreements in place, vendor agreements in place. So what to do after you have already validated? So validation would mean that you are cross-checking that this thing is not already being done and filed by somebody else. So now you can actually claim to be the owner of this thing. There will be a process attached to every form of IP that you will file, either trademark, patent, copyright, design. It will undergo certain examination process, and post examination, if in case it is granted to you, then you will have a certificate issued by the government and you are the only user, which means that if any one of you gets the design application or gets the patent application issued on their name or on the behalf of university, if you're working somewhere, then the corporate, if you are having your own startup, then the startup, everybody will claim to be the sole owner. So what it means is that anybody else using the same technology would have to take a license from you. And if that is not happening, it is a direct infringement. So you can actually sue them to use your idea, to use your copyright, to use your brand and logo. So all these well-known brands, if you look around yourself, you are actually pretty much from head to toe surrounded by the brands. So if I talk about clothing industry, there will be certain brands. If I talk about watches, if I talk about laptops, if I talk about cars, everything is under some brand. And that brand needs to be protected because people would either start replicating the brand and then the dilution will happen. You don't want to do that. So the initial validation or initial search of something already existing. So when you conceive an idea and you want to cross check whether it is already done by somebody else or not, you can go to IP India and then there are subsections available for patent applications, for trademarks, for designs. You can just cross check whether it is already existing or not. If you want to do a bit of global research, then Google Patents is where you can go and type in certain keywords related to your idea and see whether it is already done or not. If in case it is already done, then you need not to actually go beyond it and then work towards it because it will not be falling under your name and eventually either patent application or trademark will not be granted. But if you feel that there is a possibility of the preliminary search that you can do, go to an expert and try to conduct a proper patentability search or a trademark search or a copyright search to cross check whether what you have done is rest assured or not. If there is a possibility that whatever you are thinking in terms of idea can be implemented and it is novel also, that can be protected under some form of IP and you will eventually be benefiting from it either in terms of licensing or technology transfer as well. So that's where the innovation can be protected under subheads. Now, other than that, what all needs to be done would be there are certain points that you have to take care of whenever you are working on any idea. So either you will form an entity of your own, so it can be a startup registration, It can be that you are working with certain organization, so you will be called as an inventor, but the ownership will lie with the entity or the organization or university that you're working with. So accordingly, you have to take care of certain aspects when you are working on the idea. So if the startup consideration is there, then anything which is beyond not exceeding beyond 100 CR will be considered as a startup. And then under DPIIT, you have certain benefits enrolled for that. So as I was telling you that the formation will be required. So if you are working independently, if you have an idea for it will be majorly for the innovators who are not associated with any organization, would be that you can actually register your idea, and based on that you can register your company as well. So the company formation will be after the company formation, either it's like proprietor, private limited, LLP, whatever you establish, you can enroll under DPIIT to claim yourself as a startup. So they are the granting authority which issues you a startup certificate, under which you can enroll for a lot of IP benefits, lot of tax benefits. So eventually, for funding as well, you can actually raise funding from different organizations on that certificate issued to you. So suppose that, as I was telling you, that having an idea is not actually a business. So it is something that you have to work around it. So it has to be a great or a unique product or service, first of all. Then you can consider yourself as a startup or an ideation entity. If it's a standard business which is running, then eventually you can run a business, but it will not be called as startup. So if you want to enroll for such benefits and you want to get into that incubation system, into innovation system, whatever you're creating in terms of idea, and the only idea cannot be protected by any form of IP or by any form of, I would say, legal implication. It needs to be executed in some form. So executed would mean, say, for example, I say that I want to make a flying car, or I want to, if I talk about, say, Elon Musk, he wanted to make a electric vehicle company. So only forming that I will make an electrical vehicle company or a flying car is not enough for you to go under any registration. You have to execute the idea, which would mean that you have to create either a product or some kind of a process or some kind of a service out of it, under which something can be executed. So if it is an app based, software based business, then you have to create that app, and then it needs to be functional in that manner. Right. So whenever you are establishing a business, after the ideation, after the validation of ideation, whether you can file for some form of IP or not, you have to decide that whether there will be a company, or you want to do it under individual name, or you want to do it under the corporate or entity you're working with. Now that decision will be guided by the contracts that you sign with the other people. So if you are, say, for example, for the students who are enrolled into an university, most of the time the university owns the IP. So they will be filing for the intellectual property. If in case there is a clause which says that the students or the faculty members are free to have their own IP as well, in that case, they can file individually as well. If in case the contract says that it needs to be done on joint manner, which would mean that the innovator will also be filing the application and the university will also be filing the application, it needs to be filed by both of them, like with the equal ownership. So all that will be guided by the kind of contracts that you follow. Now, forming a company, why it is important in comparison to running it on individual name, is that the liability will be not on the individual per se. So if you form an entity, either a private limited or an LLP in India, then the liability is on the company, because the company is an entity, and it acts as a person as such. So basically, your individual assets will not be under question. And that is where you can safeguard yourself on a lot of fronts as well. So always run through an entity. When you have an idea and post that, you of course need to do a domain purchase. So you can actually purchase it through various portals and you must be knowing about them. So say for example, GoGetDaddy is one. So you can just go and search whether that domain is available or not and buy a domain. Before that, also conduct a trademark search, because at times what happens is that you will be able to buy the domain, but the trademark is already owned by somebody else. And unfortunately, domain based organizations are not in sync with the trademark applications or the trademark authorities. So, trademark search needs to be done before you buying a domain. And that will give you a little bit of heads up whether you should be going ahead with that or not. Yes. Right. So, suppose that how to go about when you're creating a website related to your idea. So, apart from the standard things that you do, like of course you would be having a little bit of competitor check. So you will have an understanding of who are your competitors, what are they building, what are the kind of user interface that they are creating. You would not like to replicate that, but at least be competitive enough with your competitors. So that understanding needs to be done. Other than that, your visitors needs to stay on your website. So that user interface is very, very important. So if somebody goes to your website and they're not staying on your website for a defined period of time, then they will not eventually be turning into a potential customer or a user for any kind of idea that you have or a startup that you have. So that needs to be done with the SEO and with the proper understanding and a roadmap, that what is the strategy that you would like to have the visitors on the website as such. Then if I talk about the legal part of it, then your terms and condition, privacy policy needs to be written very, very aggressively and protecting you from any liability that can happen. So, say, for example, if I talk about social media websites, so if you go to Instagram, if you go to Twitter, if you go to Facebook or any other portal, there will be terms and condition and privacy policy that you enroll for. And most of the time, I would say that people don't read it through. So your data, they are already asking you that your data will be shared with multiple entities. So data breach or data, I would say, the percentage of what you're sharing with them, how it can be exploited by them is already written. So if you are signing that, there can be consequences to it, and you no longer can claim to that. If I talk about, like for example, healthcare related startups, so there the customer or the patient is going to be using the website to reach out to, say for example, telemedicine apps or to book your medicines. So you have 1mg and you have other portals as well. So there, that particular aggregator, that particular app is not responsible for the kind of services that are delivered through that portal. So they are enrolling, they are kind of aggregators between two entities. So you cannot hold them responsible for giving a false advice, which is by some kind of a doctor. So the most that they can do at their end will be the validation part of it. That of course you need to do a pre-validation for all the doctors that you're enrolling for. But other than that, it is basically on the doctor's decision and doctors' analysis that they can treat you in certain manner. All the terms and conditions, that what can go wrong, what all needs to be written related to your payments, related to your return policies, related to the data that is involved, needs to be written very, very carefully. Then suppose that whenever you are ready with your idea and you're ready with your website and you're ready with your company and everything is sorted, now you need to have a pitch deck ready. So pitch deck basically means to raise funds. So you will be having a little bit of summary related to whatever you have created, related to your idea, into a form of a presentation or into a form of a PDF. You can choose according to the investor's demand as well. conveying that why your business is unique, why your idea is unique, and what are the kind of problems that you're solving and how are you solving them. Suppose that if there are multiple people involved with your idea, so there can be a founder and then there can be co-founders as well. So where one person had that idea, but to execute that idea, you need more co-founders or you need team members. In that case, you need to define what is the equity which will be decided or split among the founders. What are the kinds of role and responsibility among the founders? Like who is going to be the decision maker on everyday basis? Who is going to take care of the business? Who is going to take care of the execution part? All that needs to be pre-decided. Then related to your accounting, this is very important and mostly neglected by people whosoever is getting into ideation is that you need to have a very proper check related to the finances which are involved. Either it is raised through an investor or in general also if you're bootstrapping, it needs to be in sync. So you will definitely need a expert who can guide you through the accounting process and financial aspect of the idea. Then, of course, when you are expanding your employee and your team strength, you need to, of course, cross check and validate that what is their previous qualification, previous job titles. More than that, whether they are actually in sync with your idea or not. Because most of the time, people hire, and it usually happens in startups, that the retention rate is very less. Unless they are in sync with your idea, they're in sync with your vision, they will not stay for a very long time. So that is where you need to focus on whenever you are going for expanding your teams. Then your agreement should be in place. So whosoever you're dealing with, once you have an idea and once you have a business or once you have an entity, you need to have agreements in place. Be it vendors can be the person who is developing your app, like developers can be there, a person you are engaging with in terms of co-founders, so co-founder agreements would be there. If you're engaging with team members, an employee agreement would be there. If in case you are talking to investors, if in that case investor agreement would be there. If you're disclosing your idea to somebody and you're disclosing your idea to say investors or to people that you want to get on board, there will be non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements that you have to take care of. Because unless you have those agreements in place and your invention is lost, like basically if the idea is floating among different people and somebody starts executing the same, you have no longer right on that. So first thing would be don't disclose it to multiple people. आपको जो भी आपके पास idea है, आप उस पे अगर काम कर रहे हैं, execution कर रहे हैं, you need not to tell it to everybody whosoever is around you, be it your friends and family. You need to first consider for filing some form of IP so that it is protected. You get a priority date, you get an application number. Post that you can display it into the market. That's all done. So intellectual property, we have already discussed in the first slide itself that you can consider for filing patent applications, copyrights, trade secrets, terms and condition privacy policy. For anything which is having a digital presence, this is required. You need to comply with that for sure. Then business, for any business to become successful, you need to be a good salesperson. So technology is not enough. Most of the time what people feel is that they are very good at technology, they are very good at idea, but they don't know how to sell it. So unless you know that what is the market potential for that particular idea, so at times you have to create your potential market. Like for Amazon, if I talk about, there was no potential market as such. They were the first entity which breached and created their own market. Post that, if I talk about like Flipkart or any other e-commerce website, they came in as a competitor to Amazon, but Amazon created that industry for themselves. So if in case that is the reason and that is the case, you have to create an industry altogether, or you can act as a competitor to existing ones, solving some kind of a problem which they are not able to do that. This is already done. Now, post that, when you are done with everything related to pitch deck, you have funds and everything. Suppose that your marketing strategies are very important in terms of execution of your idea. So you need to do your proper SEO, which is search engine optimization. You need to have certain blogs written. You have to develop good content and ask influencers also to pitch into your, if in case it's product related, they can display the product. If in case it is service related, you can display it through the service. So you must have seen like lots of ads coming in for urban clap. So that is kind of a methodology that they're following for social media business plans, where they are implementing people's experience space to promote their business. So you can use social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and many more, wherever you feel your target audience is. And that is also according to the industry. So if you are into a very, very niche industry, every social media might not be a good platform for you. So you have to pick and choose whether it is B2B, whether it is B2C. Accordingly, you need to strategize your marketing decisions. Then network, of course, networking needs to be done. And without having established network, you will not be able to continue with what you're working with. Then at some point of time, you would need experts to come into picture, which you cannot afford. Like at the initial stage of ideation, at the initial stage of startups, people are not, it's actually not possible for them to enroll for consultants. So because they're little expensive on that specialized field. So you can always go and approach them for certain projects or for certain activities where a lot of freelancers are available. Like freelancing.com, Upwork. Upwork is pretty good for freelancers. So if you want to take an advice, you can go there. Suppose that if in case we are talking about anything, or probably whenever you are pitching your idea to any investor can be anybody. It can be your university also, it can be an individual, an HNI also, or it can be a proper firm also. So there, what all needs to be written in a pitch deck would be that whatever information you're disclosing, first of all, you need to have an IP clause, like at the below of the slide, that all the intellectual property is your ownership and all rights should be reserved. So that needs to be written for sure, so that at least if in case you haven't filed for any IP, at least this will safeguard you to certain extent. Then please introduce certain kind of, I would say, facts and figures rather than too much of theory into it, so that people can actually look up to what is the kind of profit that you can make, what is that you can achieve, what is the problem statement, how are you solving that problem, all that needs to be written. If possible, if there is a demo possible for the kind of product and services that you're doing, do that in person. What not to do in your pitch deck would be, don't try to cover everything that you know about the business into that pitch deck. So it should be not more than, I would say, 10 to 15 slides are more than enough for an attention span. So don't go beyond that. And don't use too much of industry words. So there might be a possibility that you're an industry expert and you say, if you come from IT industry, if you come from mechanical industry, if you come from biotechnology industry, there will be terms that you will be knowing, but the investor might not be able to understand. So use simple language to convey that what you are going to do about it. And don't underestimate your competition. Be rest assured that what is your competition and how are you going to compete with them, because investors do their due diligence and homework before investing into any startup. So if you are just neglecting the competition, that will not work in your favor. Then you can run certain paid or inorganic marketing as well. So that will help you to get some traction onto your websites. These are certain websites where you can cross-check. So in the first initial slide itself, we discussed that Google patent or Google search can be done to cross-check whatever your idea is already being done or not. If in case you want to conduct specific patent searches, you can go to countries' websites. Like for US, if you want to do, you can go to USPTO. If you want to do it in India, you can go to IP India. Accordingly, you can search. So who are the people who can actually fund you whenever you have an idea? This is very important for most of the people. Having an idea and wanting to do something about that idea would be either you can save money and do a bootstrap kind of a thing. So personal funds can be used. You can ask and convince your friends and family to fund into your idea. You can, of course, reach out to angel investors and venture capitalists as well. So, who are angel investors are usually people who are HNI, having investing their own money, and venture capitalists are majorly those people who have a pool of money, like from different sets of resources, and with the pool of money, they are funding that startups. So, all these people, there are a lot of firms, venture capitalists, and your angel investors present. So you can, of course, approach them according to industry that they're working in. There will be a lot of investors who work only in tech base. There are a lot of investors who only work in agriculture base. So according to the kind of industry that your idea is from, you need to execute and reach out to people who are working in that particular industry itself. Then you cannot miss out on the licenses that you will require according to the line of business that you're into. So whatever your business is, there will be certain certifications, certain licenses. Say, for example, ISO certification for SAI license, all that will be required for a food business. So in that case, you need to get that done. So there are certain kind of insurances also which are available for startups and for ideas. So you can, if you have a small base, then general liability insurance, property insurance, director's insurance. If in case something happens to director, that at that point of time it becomes very important. And majorly for larger organizations, these kind of director insurance is pretty much required. Health insurance for employees, data breach and cyber security insurance, key man life insurance, all that can be claimed. As we were discussing, that whenever you have to reach out to an investor, please try to select the specific industry that they are from and the kind of the stage of the company also. So say for example, if your startup is at a very very early stage, so आपके पास सिर्फ idea है, you don't have any execution, you don't have any profit as such, any client for that matter. So it's very very difficult for you to reach out to an investor and raise money, because most of the time people don't prefer to put in money in the early stage or a seed based startup. At that point of time you need to generate some more funds so you can start making something out of it. So once you reach to a point, either in terms of profit or in terms of at least the users, so if you have a sufficient user base also, investors would be interested in your business. So that is where you have to decide what to do. In your business contracts, as I was discussing, that whether it is related to co-founders, investors, or employees, there are certain things which you have to specifically um, focus on. So that would be that what is the obligation and role and responsibility that you're expecting from the other party to fulfill? What are the liabilities associated with that contract? What are the payment terms that needs to be very very specifically written, like whether there will be an advance payment or there will be a full payment or there will be phase wise payment, all that needs to be written. And what are the risks and responsibilities of the party, like if in case something goes wrong, who will be held responsible for what? That needs to be written very very carefully. So these are the kind of different agreements that we've already discussed. Yeah. So if you have any questions, maybe we can address to that. I'll be happy to assist you. Do we have any questions? You can put in the chat box also if you have any questions.
The session was so informative. Thank you very much, ma'am.
So if we don't have any questions, maybe we can close. And in general, if anybody of you would like to discuss anything related to what we have discussed today and reach out to me with some question, I'm just dropping you my email ID in the chat box. You can probably reach out and write to me. I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you, Purva, then. It was my pleasure.
Welcome, ma'am. It's our pleasure to be with you, ma'am. The session was so informative and so interacting now, and
Thank,
so interesting. Thank you so much, ma'am.
thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, ma'am.